This is Beekeeper Confidential, a show about the curious lives of bees and their beekeepers. I'm your host, Mandy Shaw. Today's guest is a beekeeper out of the Bay Area in California who gained her roots in beekeeping while working for the Maui Queen Bee Company in Hawaii. She learned the ins and outs of queen rearing as a beginning beekeeper. She loves to teach others about bees and natural beekeeping and has designed a business that provides valuable education to the community and fellow beekeepers. Please welcome Emily Bondor of the Santa Cruz Bee Company. Well, hi.
Hi.
It's good to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Taka, so Bill, was like, you need to talk to Emily.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. Yeah, I had been so excited to meet Taka because, I had been following her on Instagram and seeing all the things she was doing, and then it was at Monday last year that I got to meet her, and just immediately we were like, "Wow, you're so awesome!" So we really connected and just had a ton in common. And I loved going to that conference because a lot of the beekeeping meetings and things that I go to, there's not a ton of people like in their 20s, 30s. So that was cool to like meet the people that were sort of in the same age cohort that were professionally beekeeping.
Yeah, and like movers and shakers in the industry too.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time because even I've been keeping bees for about 7 years now, and I feel like when I was starting out, I didn't really know anyone else at all, initially, and then all the people that I started meeting were all guys that were like in their 50s and 70s, and I was like, oh, this is like not my age cohort. Yeah. And I don't really have a lot in common with these people. And now I'm starting to meet a lot more people that are doing sort of similar work in different areas of the country and around the world that are like, bringing new energy to it, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, we really are the next generation of beekeepers. Yeah. There's got to be a changing of the guards at some point,
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's cool to kind of see people stepping up and new approaches and just different blood.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Yeah, and more women and more diversity.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. That's a huge piece of it, and I'm really glad to be seeing, that becoming a bigger part of the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so I always like to know people's origin stories. So you've been working with bees for like 7 years. What were you doing before bees?
It wasn't too long after graduating from undergrad, from college. I went to school in Massachusetts. I'm from New Jersey originally, so grew up on the East Coast and went to school in Amherst, Massachusetts. And then I always knew that I wanted to be in California or in the Bay Area, from I don't know when. But as a teenager, I wanted to go to school out here, and my parents were like, no, stay on the East Coast, give us a little more time to be with you. So then after I graduated, I moved. I'd never been to California before, and I just was like, all right, I'm just going to look for positions. And I ended up doing 2 years of this program called AmeriCorps, which is kind of like domestic Peace Corps, and they're like contract positions for about like 11 months. And so that gives you a chance to try out a line of work. And it was really appealing to me because they don't pay very well, but they offer money for paying off student loans or for tuition for school. So for me, that was very appealing, kind of not knowing what I wanted to do immediately. And I graduated in 2011, so it wasn't right when the recession had hit, but there was still kind of a scarcity of jobs.
Yeah.
So we're sort of trying to figure out, okay, what can I do just with undergraduate degree and having not really had job experience? So for 1 year, I was in San Jose, California, and I was working for this urban forestry program.
Oh, cool.
So we were basically replanting and establishing trees in the urban landscape to kind of help with just making the city nicer. And Silicon Valley, it was just like basically during the 80s they like paved everything and just turned it into like this huge urban landscape, which is so sad because 50, 100 years ago, that's where like all of the beautiful fruit orchards were. So it's like a really great place for having orchards and growing food. And then kind of that culture sort of went away when technology came in. So that was kind of a big part of that program was kind of, and my job was basically young tree care and going out and making sure that the newly planted trees had water and mulch and were staked up and were, healthy and everything. So kind of young tree care. So, and that got me really interested in horticulture and started getting more interested in gardening and farming. And I knew I wanted to do some kind of like outdoor education programming. So then I realized that it would be good for me to get more like education experience. So my second year doing AmeriCorps, I moved up to San Francisco and I was working for this program called Jumpstart. And that basically for ages like 3 through 5 years of age, providing extra literacy support to close the achievement gap for underserved families. Like a lot of the people in San Francisco, like there's a lot of people that don't have English as a first language. There's a lot of people that speak Mandarin and Vietnamese, and there's not always great programming for those families. So there was a lot of language immersion stuff. And so, yeah, I did like community engagement for them. So I did a lot of like outside events, but I was living in the city and I grew up in the country and I didn't like living in the city. And so I was like, oh, I really want to do some kind of like farming, food justice, outdoor education type programming, but I actually have no experience working on a farm or know very little about farming and agriculture. So realized that in order to actually be able to do that, I should learn more about farming. So then I decided to there's this program called woofing, which is like opportunities on organic farms or work away. I feel like I've heard a lot of different acronyms for what people think it stands for. So I'm not sure. I think it's worldwide opportunities on organic farms. Ultimately, I had a few different options for places that I was thinking of going, but ultimately ended up going to Hawaii, and I was on the island of Maui, and that was where I got introduced to beekeeping and just totally fell in love with it.
Wow. So the farm that you were working on, was it a honeybee farm, or did they just have bees, or like how did that happen?
Yeah, so they just happened to have bees. It was like a permaculture farm. So part of the draw was like, come live in Hawaii, work on this beautiful farm, and gain a permaculture design certificate in the process. So it was like an internship on a farm, but it was very much geared at permaculture, which is, working with the landscape and it's like a regenerative approach that sort of mimics nature. And so it was a vegetable and herb and fruit production farm primarily, and we had chickens and things like that. But then we just happened to have like 2 or 3 beehives on the farm, and the guy who was the beekeeper that tended to them, he's a guy named Pomerleau, and he had at the time had a business as well called the Maui Queen Bee Company. And so he was raising queens and exporting them, naturally mated, and then exporting them to mainland US and other places. And he said, hey, I need some help. I need, people to graft for me. And I was like, okay, cool.
Just like dive right in.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't even know what that means. I was like, I've grafted fruit trees before, but I'm pretty sure this is not the same thing. So that was like, I really had very little experience, just basically getting in a hive a couple times with him. And he would come to the farm and we as the farm interns would like, we helped him like build boxes and frames and stuff like that. But it was like very little experience. And then essentially I just started, he had a queen raising operation and a bee yard out on the other side of the island. So I would go out there with him a couple times a week. And there was another girlfriend of mine, the two of us both worked for him. And we just started managing his mating nukes and grafting and kind of doing the queen calendar and, all sorts of different things.
I just keep thinking, like, what an amazing step into beekeeping that was. But it wasn't like you were just stepping into it. You were, like, climbing all the way to the top. And
yeah, exactly. And it was really kind of unexpected. And at that point, I was about 25 at that time, and I was really kind of trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? Colony collapse and everything was being talked about a lot, and like bees were definitely becoming more a part of the conversation. So I kind of realized, especially with something like grafting, I was like, this is something that most backyard beekeepers never do. Something that many beekeepers don't ever do. And it was sort of where I started. And I said, oh, this is a really niche field that this could be a really good thing to get into and learn more about and kind of pivot myself to.
Yeah. Wow. So let's fast forward to now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time since then. So 2014, I moved back to the Bay Area. So I live in Santa Cruz, California, which is like about an hour and a half south of San Francisco. So a little kind of, it's a city, but it's a smaller city, but beautiful right on the coast. So when I was in Hawaii, there was another beekeeper that came to visit whose name is Rob Keller, and you may have heard of him or know him. He was actually just down at the Honey Love conference presenting.
Yes,
I think
I saw that he was going to be there, and I was like doing my research, and I saw you on his website as one of his affiliate beekeepers. And I was like, that's cool, but I never crossed paths with him at the conference.
Yeah, that's okay. There were a lot of people there. I didn't even know that he was going to be there actually, and then I saw it. I was like, oh, Rob's at the conference. Yeah, he and I went to Mondia together, which was really fun. But he knew the beekeeper in Maui that I was working with, and so he came out to visit and came out to the bee yard with us for a day. And I actually started, this was like when I first got Instagram, and I started following him and saw what he was doing, and he basically came to bees through art, through fine art. Mm-hmm. And so he was doing all sorts of things where he was like putting mummified animals and like mummified snakes and things like that into beehives and having the bees like propolize them and taking photos and just doing all sorts of crazy stuff that was on the deep end of what most people are like, what is this?
Yeah.
I thought he was kind of quirky and interesting, and so really enjoyed his content that he was putting out there. And so when I was coming back to California, I said, he's out of Napa Valley, so he's like about an hour from San Francisco. So from Santa Cruz, it's about 2 hours. So reasonable to go up and visit him. And I basically reached out and said, hey, I'm back in the Bay. I want to come see your apiary operation and like kind of see what you're up to and visit with you. And so I went up right after I moved back, went up and helped him with an educational event that he was doing in Sonoma, and he teaches beekeeping at a Montessori school, and so that was really cool to me because it's kind of the educational component that I was missing. So got to kind of see that, and I was like, wow, this is so awesome. Like the school that he teaches at is like a fully functional farm. They have like 15 beehives there and do all sorts of really cool.
Lucky kids.
Yeah. And it's like he works with like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade kids. So just awesome ages. And so anyways, just volunteered with him at this event and helped him out. And then a couple days later, he sent me a message and said, hey, do you want to work for me? I'm like, I live 2 hours away. That seems kind of crazy. But I kind of figured it out because I just moved back and didn't have immediate other job or anything lined up. I wanted to do beekeeping. Mm-hmm. So thought, hey, this could be a really great opportunity to kind of apprentice with someone and learn a lot, directly from someone, which I feel like something like beekeeping is really lends itself well to hands-on learning and observation. Yeah, so that was 2014. I started working with him, and every now and then I still go up and work with him, but basically for a year, I went up every week and stayed for 2 days there and would stay overnight. And so just learned a ton.
Like bee camp.
Yeah, exactly. It was extended bee camp. Got to see what his business model was and the educational work that he was doing. And he does a lot of hive management for restaurants and businesses and individuals, and kind of like at Mondia someone said concierge beekeeping, which I was like, that's kind of snooty, but then I looked up the definition of concierge and I'm like, oh, that's actually exactly what it is. Anyways, have worked with him for a number of years, and it was through observing his business model, Napa, that I started the Santa Cruz Bee Company. And we're far enough away from each other that we're not in competing markets.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I got to where I'm at now in terms of the business in Santa Cruz.
What a very unique story and turn of events and opportunities.
Yeah, it's been really cool, and he's always been a really great support person for me. It was through him that I met Sam Comfort and all these other people, so it's been a great opportunity to network. I've gotten to see like Tom Seeley a bunch of times and Paul Stamus and like all these different cool people come through, and there's a really rich sort of hobbyist, but really intense, like very passionate kind of beekeeping culture around the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. So like people are like really into it and spend like a ton of time working for their regional clubs and things like that.
I love to hear that. One of the things that we struggle with here with the Beekeeping Association that I've been with since I started working with bees is finding people that are able to take the time to volunteer, not only for events, but for board positions when those come available.
Totally.
It's tough.
It's really tough, yeah. Here in Santa Cruz, for the past 3 years, I've been the president of our beekeepers, and it's a lot of work, you know, because
It is. I think it also brings a lot of opportunities, though. I recently gave up my spot as president, and I went back to be the treasurer of the club. And when that position was open, I was trying to tell people this is going to open up so many doors for you. If you are a serious beekeeper and you want access to lots of new opportunities, this is a great way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been really nice, and I feel like I hadn't had a lot of leadership roles necessarily in the past, so it was cool for me to kind of get to have that responsibility. And I'm still a board member with the group, so still very much involved. We kind of have a sort of standing rule of usually 2 years of a term for a president, and then you could always years down the road if you wanted to volunteer to do it again, you could. But and we have
I think it's important because people do get burned out. I was definitely feeling burnt out towards the end of my second year, and you need fresh blood, fresh ideas, keep the club vibrant.
Totally, yeah. And I stepped down and had another person step in after doing it for 3 years. And it's nice because they were sort of saying, okay, Emily, you're not going to be president right now, but what you can do is, because you know other people kind of in the community in the Bay Area and also further afield than that, you should try to focus on seeing if you can help us try to gain access to guest speakers that are coming in, visiting, and stuff like that. So trying to make some of those connections, which I just
now you are the concierge.
Exactly. So I just didn't have the bandwidth for that before kind of figuring out all the logistics of running all the meetings and
so. It is a lot. Okay, I have a dumb question.
There's no dumb question.
So you're in the Bay Area. Have you been there for any big earthquakes?
I have not, luckily. I've felt small ones, but it's never been enough to really jostle things too much.
I ask because, they say animals can sense when an earthquake is going to happen. And I would imagine bees can too.
I would imagine.
I was just wondering if the bees started acting weird before an earthquake.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that right before I moved back from Hawaii, or right around the month that I moved back, they did have a really big earthquake in Napa. So I got to go up and kind of see that sort of aftermath after it happened. And, they had hives fall over and, buildings, getting nothing really falling, but massive, cracks in foundations and stuff like that. So, it can be pretty serious. And while there haven't been major earthquakes, and also not here where I am in Santa Cruz, but also in Napa, 2 years ago, there were a lot of wildfires that came through. So there were a lot of seeing the landscape and changes. And we were lucky to actually not personally lose any hives through Napa Valley Bee Co, but some of them, the houses and the fields and everything burned. But I think because where the hives are, they were near gardens and things that were being irrigated, a lot of them were spared. But, some of them, the paint had bubbled on the hive because it got so hot.
Oh my God.
And I always thought, oh, well, the bees are just going to abscond. But then I was reading that if they can smell the smoke, they know, if it's a forest fire, if they just hunker down in the tree, a lot of times fires will pass through, and if it's a larger tree, it might char the bark, but it may not burn the entire tree down. So it's actually safer for them to shelter in place. But yeah, it's pretty creepy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So natural disasters.
We haven't really had any natural disasters here since I've been keeping bees, but we had the solar eclipse that happened during the day, and all of the bees came home and went inside their hives, and then when the eclipse was done, they just came back out and went back to work.
Wow. Oh, interesting. It's pretty wild. They're very intelligent. I mean, they know more than us.
Yeah. So do you also do classes, beginning beekeeping classes?
Yeah.
What all does your business do?
I do kind of a little bit of everything through Santa Cruz Bee Company. And part of that is because when I first started, I was like, well, let me just try all the things you can do with beekeeping and see what I like more and what I like as much. But I absolutely love teaching and educating people. So that was a very big component for me. When I first, started the business, was the beginning of 2015. So it's been about 5 years. And when I first started, I was just, people would call me and say, hey, can you help me with this, that, or the other thing? And some of them, I still work with to this day and are, people that I do a lot of hive management for people when they're, there's a lot of people that around the Bay Area that really, have beautiful gardens and want to have bees, but just don't have the time or capacity or skill set. And some people want to work together. Some people want it done for them. So in terms of management, it's really a wide range from call me up one time and I'll help you with something. And then I will hear from you again to people that I have monthly clients or accounts that I kind of do the management for or with them. And then some people it's like quarterly. So I would say that that's a pretty big component of kind of how the business can like financially sustain itself, is through kind of consultation. But then another big part of it is teaching and education. And so for about 4 years now, I've been teaching workshops through the local community college.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and so they have an extension program, and I started just doing a beginner beekeeping course. And then after a year of doing that, I started doing a friendly gardening class where we also would go to a plant nursery. That one, I don't know as much about horticulture and plants. So I was sort of like, I mostly wanted to teach it so that I would learn more.
Yeah. I feel like that's a huge knowledge gap for me. I do not know very much about plants.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's, for me, I was like, well, I want, people always ask me, what can I plant for my bees that will be good for them? And for here in California, especially especially in drought years, we'll have like a huge dearth period where it'll be July to November or June to November that there's like nothing. So people are always like, what can I plant that blooms in September? So I sort of was like, well, I should learn more about kind of what I can advise people on for kind of seasonal forage. So yeah, so the beginner class, the bee friendly gardening class, then I started an intermediate class. And the beginner and the intermediate class are both very well attended, and I do mostly spring, fall. Maybe I'll do a couple in the summer. People don't think as much about bees like in late fall and winter. They're kind of like, what is that? And then it comes spring, and everybody's like, bees. So the spring classes for sure always have really good enrollment. And then starting last year, I started like a small scale queen rearing course as well. So
back to your roots.
Yeah, back to the roots. Like see what it's like to, try grafting, and because it's also a kind of a challenging thing with like very specific size, age larva, and you have to have the right conditions. That's just to physically be able to know what to graft, and then you have to kind of learn all the other processes. But in that class, the grafting and kind of managing mating nukes and cell builders and everything is part of it. But I also teach a lot just about different ways to do a split. And for a lot of backyard beekeepers, they don't need to raise 60 queens. They need 1 or 2. So I do a lot about kind of teaching people, techniques for, or harvest. If a colony is swarming, you maybe can go in and harvest a queen cell or catch a virgin queen, or things like that. So kind of learning to identify those things. And then I've done a little bit like there's also I did a workshop class where we made like a propolis tincture and beeswax and stuff like that. So there's like some of those like value added products kind of classes that people that aren't beekeepers but appreciate bees, and then we'll usually do like a honey tasting and stuff. So that's kind of geared more for people that are just interested in bee products. The beekeeping classes are super fun, and then like the community college has a horticulture department, so I have a beehive that I keep up at their horticulture garden. And so we do like half lecture and then half in hive portion.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's really nice for people when they, a lot of the people that attend the beginner class have never seen what a beehive looks like on the inside. So like that for me is like getting to see like the wonder of people being like, whoa, like what is this? Or hold a frame for the first time. Like that's, exciting. So.
And you don't really get much of a winter break from beekeeping.
No.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm jealous. I am missing my beekeeping so bad right now.
Yeah, it's it depends on the winter, and right now, like we haven't had a whole lot of rain in the past couple weeks, but I feel like the last couple years it's been a little bit later. Like we haven't had much rain in like December, January, and then like February, March, and even into April last year were really wet. So kind of depends, and like that sort of, it's not so much the really cold weather that it's not like we have, ice and snow, but for sure, depending on if you are raising queens or doing anything like that, you really have to work with, okay, when drones are already starting, like I've been seeing drone brood, like they're already out pretty much. But it's really, if I were to start, trying to do grafting or splitting hives right now, in the past I've done that. And then if you get a long period of rain, she has sort of like ideally like a 2 to 4 week window in which she is even able to get mated, and so you have to work with the weather, which makes it challenging because people always are wanting to get started, and I think also people have a little bit of a skewed perception of like when you can get bees.
Yes.
Because, like, in where we are in California, not here so much, but like Central Valley and a lot of places like the almond orchards, the almonds bloom about now. So I think people think, oh, the bees are doing their thing, and there's stuff is already starting to bloom, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you wanted to place an order for bees from a supplier, it's just an interesting, those things can change a lot.
I mean, here nukes are usually available in May.
Here it's like April, but it's late April usually. And our swarming season begins like mid-March. But, I'm looking at friends and people on Instagram, and like in Florida and Southern California, they're having swarms now in January.
Right.
It just really depends on where you are. And I think that's one of the fascinating things about beekeeping is like, depending on your kind of climate and weather. Like when I was in Hawaii, we had full brood rearing year round. Yes, it did rain, but it still wasn't cold, so like it's more, I think it's much more temperature dependent than moisture dependent for rearing.
What kind of hives are you working with? Are you just using Langstroth?
Primarily for me, I use Langstroth. That's what I learned on, and I do think that they're easier in a lot of ways to manage, and I think the bees over winter, granted we don't have a harsh winter, but they tend to, I think the bees like being in more of a vertical configuration naturally. I do work a little bit with top bar hives. About 2 or 3 years ago now, there was another woman in Santa Cruz who had a similar business, and she ended up moving away, and so she said, hey, do you want to take over my business, basically?
Oh my gosh.
So and she had a handful of clients, but pretty much everyone that she had set these up for were in top bar hives. And then she did a couple of those long Langstroth hives where it's like 2 deep next to each other.
I don't love those.
I don't either. They're weird.
I
really think that bees want to have their honey above them, and that's my issue with top bar hives too, is that here, like, they just work better in warmer climates. So we're kind of on the border with like they can work here, but I just find that if you get to a certain size and then can't expand them beyond their width, so you can't put a sticker on a top bar hive or anything like that. So in terms of expanding them, and sometimes you have top bar hives, like these ones were made by this woman, so she had the same specs, so they were the same sizes, but like trying to split, or like if you need a frame of brood, a bar of brood, a lot of the top bar hives are different dimensions.
I had a client last spring, and she had a top bar that was ready to be split. And then she had another empty top bar hive, but it wasn't as deep as the one we were splitting from. And so I think this is really why she had me do it, because she knew that it would be really traumatic for her to cut into the brood combs to make it fit. And it was pretty traumatic, but and that's the trouble with the top bar hives, is there's just so many different designs out there. Luckily, I have 5 top bar hives, and they're all the same make and model.
That's great. That's like the best scenario.
Yes. Yeah. And the bars are the same length as the Langstroth bars. So if push came to shove and I needed to split from a top bar into a Lang, I could.
Yeah. That's ideal. That's the best case scenario, because I mean, there was a time where we really needed brood, and I ended up like, this lady had a top bar hive, and I just like horizontally, like totally different orientation, to put a deep frame of brood in her top bar hive, and it's like it's a disaster, but we really needed nurses. Like, it's just, it's one of those things.
The bees are so resilient when it comes to us, like, doing weird little things like that.
It ended up working out pretty well, but yeah, it is kind of funny. So yeah, primarily Langstroth hive is what I like to work with, and around here, like, we do have a couple of people that sell nukes, and that's pretty much always kind of Langstroth frames. So it's just kind of, for people, if I'm, and for me, if I'm splitting a hive, it's almost always Langstroth frames.
Yeah.
So just kind of, you kind of just end up gravitating towards what you, in terms of what equipment you already have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of experience working with like Ware hives and some different like styles of observation hives, but Ware hives are pretty much just observational management, really, because there's not a whole lot.
I like the size and I like what they look like, but yeah, it's basically observational management.
Yeah, it's very hard, and I mean, you can't manage them alone, because if you're trying to under super them, then you have to have one person lifting and the other person, getting the box in place.
I overwintered one Ware hive last year, and it's going into its second winter, or it's in its second winter, and then I have a swarm that I put in a Ware, and the one that has overwintered twice is really mean. So I don't want to open them up, but at the same time, like, I would like to harvest some of that honey that's in there, because there's a lot, but then you don't know where the brood is, and you don't know if they have their brood nest like really tall and narrow, if they've got it just confined to a couple of boxes. You don't know where the queen is, like, you don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like you pull that kind of top bar piece up, and then it's like, how do you really harvest it without, I mean, you just end up ripping comb.
Yeah.
So just being kind of messy. And you hope that you're not breaking apart cells or whatever.
What is your favorite thing that bees do?
Oh, man. That is a very tough question.
I mean, we have such an intimate knowledge of queen rearing and the development of larvae into pupa and the magic of queens, but...
Oh, gosh, yeah. It's so hard to know. I mean, one of my favorite, like, phenomenon that I, with working with queen rearing and getting to, be in hives when they're just right around swarming or post-swarming, is hearing the queen piping. It's just a really fun thing, especially when I'm working with new beekeepers, that they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, do you hear that other sound? It's sort of like, beep, 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 beep. It's like a totally different sort of sound to it than the regular hum of the hive.
I've only heard that one time.
I love it. It's like, it's such a different sound, and the fact that you know what is happening, they're communicating with each other, and the whole process of the queen going into battle, their battle cry. Yeah, and getting to kind of observe and look and teach people about, okay, this is a queen cell that hatched on its own, because there's the little trap door on the bottom of the queen cell versus one that's torn out on the side that kills probably by another queen, and then the bees can tell that queen is dead, so they opened it up and removed the pupa, and the kind of intimate stuff with queen rearing. And like, I mean, also just, it comes up in so many conversations that I have when people ask about the process of, do you only have one queen bee, and how do they make a new queen bee, or how does that all happen? And getting to explain the whole food is destiny piece is like, that just blows my mind, that just their food can determine whether or not it becomes a worker bee or a queen bee, and determines whether or not they're sexually mature and have the right organ. That's really interesting to me.
What's the most baffling thing that you've experienced with bees? Oh. Not life in general.
Yeah. Well, the past couple years, and I think it again is coming from a place of raising queens and checking hives consistently to see, okay, do we, where are we at in the process of this queen being, hatched from her queen cell, and then checking back to see if she's mated and if she's laying eggs, and noticing a lot of challenges with queens in the past couple years, particularly with sometimes queens never coming back from their mating flight. apparently, or also seeing what appears to be like pseudo queen or sort of the half caste queen, where see that you have a queen in a hive, but she's not laying properly, so she's laying multiple eggs per cell. And wondering, did she not mate with enough drones? Was usually for me, my observation is that that's a queen that something went wrong in her feeding when she was really young, that she was, had been switched to brood food, and then the bees said, oh, wait, no, this needs to be a queen. And then, even if there's a short window of time in which they're not fed royal jelly, then they can develop and look just like a queen, but they don't actually have like a fully developed reproductive system.
You just blew my mind.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It can be super baffling because people are like, wait, I have a queen, I can see her.
Yeah.
But she's only laying drones. And so, like, sometimes you get laying worker bees where the laying workers lay drone eggs if they don't have a queen. But then in my experience, sometimes you have a queen that just is either really poorly mated and has very weak pheromones, and then they'll supersede her. But then also in that supersedure process, like, generally I think just depending on what's happening in your environment, sometimes those queens are able to find all the right drones. And just based on your episode about the Map My DCA episode.
I know. That's so cool.
We mate with, or, we thought it was like 10, and we're like, oh, it might actually be like 7 drones that they mate with.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's so amazing about honeybees is we're always discovering new things, and we're always discovering how wrong we were about certain assumptions, or even studies that have been done, like the whole varroa hemolymph thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All this time it was wrong.
Yeah.
And,
it was wrong, and everybody was saying that was what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We're making new discoveries, and we're updating old discoveries.
Exactly. Yeah. Updating the science and the research. And yeah, a couple of years ago, I saw Tom Seeley speak at one of might have been the San Mateo group. And he, he said, I would say I probably know about 3% of what happens in a beehive. Like, if Tom Seeley knows 3%, what the heck do we know? Like, wow, that's incredible. That's what really draws me in, is that, I feel like I'm a lifelong learner in general in many things in the world, but especially with beekeeping, there's such a wealth of knowledge and things that have already been discovered. And then I feel like there's always possibilities for, being that person that observes that one thing and makes note of it and says, what's happening here? And then, for all you know, you might discover something that no one's known before.
Right, yeah.
It's kind of cool to think about all the possibilities that still exist.
Cool. Well, Emily, it has been such a pleasure getting to know you and talking with you.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me on the show, Mandy.
Of course, and my pleasure.
To learn more about Emily, visit santacruzbeecompany.com. You can also find Emily on Instagram at Santa Cruz Bee Co. I'll also include links to her website and social media on my website at beekeeperconfidential.com. If you've been enjoying the show and want to help support what we do here, you can become a patron by visiting patreon.com/Mandy Shaw. Stay safe out there, everyone. These are weird times. Until next time, may the buzz be with you. Beekeeper Confidential is a Waggleworks production and is written and produced by Mandy Shaw.